Welcome to In the Green Chair, an interview podcast series for people looking to begin or expand their career in the green economy. I'm your host, Anna Garza, and today's guest in the Green Chair is clean tech entrepreneur Sumreen Rattan.
My biggest advice is to get work experience, so go on co-op terms. I can't reinforce this enough, but it's so important to get experience outside of the classroom, and it really gives you an edge, whether it's going into the entrepreneurship world like I did or applying to work at other companies. It helps you both from a resume perspective, but also from just being more confident and having experience under your belt.
Sumreen is a co-founder and COO at the award-winning clean tech startup Moment Energy. This BC-based clean tech startup creates sustainable energy storage systems by repurposing retired electric vehicle batteries. She was also recently named as one of Canada's top 30 under 30 sustainability leaders. In this episode, we discuss Sumreen's experience with her startup and how she's contributing to the circular economy. Welcome to the Green Chair, Sumreen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I'm excited for today's conversation. So, Sumreen, you graduated from Simon Fraser University in 2019 with a Bachelor of Engineering, focusing on mechatronics, robotics, and automation engineering. I'm curious, can you explain what those areas of studies are and how you ended up pursuing mechatronics?
Definitely. Yeah, that's a question that I would get all the time from family. And a lot of the times I'd say, hey, my program's called mechatronics. And they would say, Megatronics? Is that what you said? And I'd let them think that because a big part of mechatronics is the robotics field. And people tend to associate that with the Transformers movie, which kind of works. It is definitely one aspect of it. But really, mechatronics is the combination of mechanical engineering and electronics, hence the name mechatronics. And then there's a big focus on mechanical, electrical, and software. So you kind of become the jack of all trades. That's what the degree is for. And then people within the program will sometimes focus on specific areas if they're more interested in specializing in one more than the other, but others just like to keep it broad. And then that's the skill that they bring once they graduate.
Not long after you graduated, you and three of your engineering classmates co-founded a clean tech startup called Moment Energy, where you combined your interest for sustainability and engineering. Can you tell me more about your work at Moment Energy and what's your business case?
Yeah, basically at the end of our engineering degree, the four of us, so myself and my three co-founders, we decided we wanted to continue in the entrepreneurship journey that we were on. And we were actually working on a different venture than what we are today, which is Moment Energy. But that's a whole other topic. So in terms of what we're doing today is that we are repurposing retired electric vehicle batteries into energy storage systems. So what that means is that instead of using these batteries to power a car, once they retire from a vehicle, they can be installed in alternative applications, like in powering a remote building, being used to store solar or wind energy. There's so many different places you can use them.
These generators, what can they power also?
Home energy storage is something that we were doing at the beginning, but our system sizes have scaled up since then. So places that we can deploy our systems beyond the commercial off-grid sites that I was mentioning are actually on-grid sites that include like buildings or factories that are currently using maybe diesel generators as backup power. So we could use our energy storage systems as that backup instead of turning on a generator if the power goes out. Let's say a factory that's powering up all their equipment at the same time. They'll be charged a peak demand charge from the utility. So that's based on all their power consumption at one specific time. And then even though they only draw that amount of power for maybe like 10 minutes in a day, the company is charged like that much for the entire year or the entire month. And they spend like an extra hundreds of thousands of dollars just because of this like 5 minutes or 10 minutes of power that they need in one day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that's another place that we're seeing potential where you really help these companies and businesses save on that peak demand charge by using our systems when they need that excess power.
Just to have a clear idea of what it is that we're talking about today, can you explain to me what is a clean tech startup?
I guess that's an abbreviation for clean technology, is where we put it. And my definition for clean tech is a company that, or anyone that is developing a technology solution that is meant to be sustainable, that is thinking about the environment, how we can avoid toxic waste or producing fossil fuels, whatever it may be. That's the definition of clean tech. And what I've seen out there is it can range from companies like ours working with clean energy sources to people developing sustainable clothing, trying to reduce the amount of water that's used in producing things like fast fashion. So there's a huge variety in that definition of clean tech. The other piece of startup is that you're coming up with something innovative, maybe something that hasn't been done before, or something that was done and could be improved on. So the startup it's the beginning of a business idea. There's a lot of back and forth with customers involved, talking to a lot of people, validating whether, or there's like a whole problem solution mindset of making sure that whatever it is that you're developing as a startup is actually needed in the world and it's solving some kind of problem.
Definitely. And what I find interesting is that Moment Energy is currently the only Canadian company working with automakers to repurpose their EV batteries. How did you find, or how did you identify a unique opportunity that others didn't see?
It's interesting because the EV battery problem is something that people have thought about for a few decades now, even before the popularity of EVs rose. The thing was that companies that started doing this or tackling this problem were too early in the space. So they were trying to come up with solutions when there weren't even batteries retiring from vehicles yet. So for us, when we came across this problem, it ended up being like that the timing was right. So at this point, because the problem is there, the batteries are coming out of the vehicles where we have the right time, space, and opportunity to tackle this problem.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the big things with startups is finding the correct timing and kind of jumping on that opportunity. Electric vehicles are on the rise, but something most people don't think of is that these batteries don't last forever. What is the end of life situation for EV batteries, and where do batteries normally end up?
Yeah, so these batteries, when they retire from the car, they typically have an average of 80% of original capacity, which is quite significant. And the common misconception is that they're no longer useful after they're done in the vehicle, but really they could end up in landfills, on sitting on shelves, or prematurely recycled. Those are the existing solutions, and we're trying to change that and say, hey, like these don't need to be disposed of or recycled early on. We can actually repurpose them and extend the lifetime, use them for another 8 to 10 years in another application before then sending it off for recycling.
So, when you and I had met before in our pre interview, one thing you shared with me that you want is that you can have a successful business and have a positive impact. Can you tell me more about how this drives you?
I always had that fascination from technology, and then getting into engineering. At first, I was more interested in the biomedical space, so which is another way of using technology in a positive way, like trying to help people. Then another aspect is clean tech and the environment, and trying to figure out ways to help combat climate change. So that's something that drives me in Moment Energy, is that our ability to create a technology solution that's actually preventing the need to mine new lithium and the harmful conditions that are involved there, and making sure that we're moving away from using fossil fuels like diesel generators for power.
And can you share with me an example of one of those projects that you're working on?
So we have actually quite a few projects lined up for later this year that are in what we call the off-grid commercial space. So what that means, or what that contains, is wilderness lodges, mining sites, fishing lodges, basically these places that are in remote areas that have buildings that need to be powered, but right now are dependent on diesel generators to produce that power. So what we're doing is we're helping these places like wilderness lodges reduce their diesel dependency by installing our energy storage systems, which can be paired with solar panels or wind, or whatever renewable sources are out there. And then we can charge our batteries when those sources are available, and then provide power to the lodges during off-peak times. So that's one big thing that's coming up. Or we actually have maybe 4 or 5 projects just in that space coming up. And then we're able to significantly reduce their diesel usage, which is great for the environment.
Yeah, that's great. And I can imagine also with all these projects that you're taking on now, it may be difficult to have that work-life balance. I know a common stereotype surrounding startups is that there is no work-life balance, sometimes working up to 80 hours a week. Does that ring true for Moment?
So within our core values and company, we put a big focus on physical and mental health, and we have like throughout the week we'll have fitness opportunities. So we'll have team yoga sessions, or even team abs. So we'll do like a YouTube ab workout, or get outside and go for jogs. Like we signed up for the sun run. So we do encourage our employees to not make work their entire life, but a part of their life, and to have these extracurriculars or other things as well that help drive their mental health and happiness. So yeah, we've tried to change the shift, and we're trying to make that shift in the startup culture.
That's really impressive. Yeah, changing the work culture. And it seems like Moment Energy is really keen on being driven by values in the work that you're doing. I'm curious, what values and skills have been most important for your career personally?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest ones have been are things that drive me, like teamwork and collaboration. So having a really strong group of people from the beginning to work with, to bounce ideas off of, to have open communication with, has been really important. And that carries through when we hire new employees. What we look for in the interview process as well is like people who value open communication and collaboration. But then the other aspects are the sustainability. We've already talked about the creating a positive impact on the environment using technology.
We'll be right back. This interview series is part of the Green Collar Careers program, brought to you by Relay Education. Relay is a Canadian charity that delivers renewable energy, environmental education, and green careers programs for youth. Remember to check out our website, relayeducation.com, and social media channels at Relay Education to find out when our next interview will be posted, and to find resources on how to start your green career. So I know that you are the COO, the Chief Operating Officer for Moment Energy. And you shared with me that you have worn several hats, whether that be working in marketing, sales tasks, etc., and just managing that kind of day-to-day work of the business. What's your experience as a leader, either previously or now because of your work as the COO?
So my work previously is through my engineering degree, I did 3 major co-op placements. So there were 2 companies in Vancouver that I worked at. And then I got a chance to move to Silicon Valley and work for Apple for 8 months. So that I think my experience in each of these companies carried through. So whether it was technical skills, so doing software development, which I don't do as much of today, but I did in the beginning. That's definitely been valuable. And then the learning how process works in actual industry applications. So whether that's like work culture or expectations from your manager, or how to communicate with your team. So just like regular workplace things that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't done those co-op placements, those have all transferred over. And then they gave me an idea of what we should do as a company or what we shouldn't do in our practices. But today, in terms of my role, I manage 2 areas of the company. So one is marketing and the other is supply chain. So the marketing side of things, it's been a lot of promoting Moment Energy from a PR perspective, but also working on our messaging, like how we want to portray ourselves to the public, what's the easiest way to get communication across. So those are things that I work on every day and try to improve on every day. And then on the supply chain side of things, I manage our relationships with the automakers and work on onboarding strategy for new automakers, which is a lot of fun.
Being a startup, I know that investors are huge in helping grow your company. How do you go about finding investors?
So in the beginning, it was a little bit harder to find investors. Like when you're super early stage, or there's no projects out there, or it's just an idea. And at that time, that's when we looked for more friends and family to support the business and invest in the business, to help get the ball rolling. So that was very helpful, and we did a lot of presentations and pitches to the family. Like treated it like we had like a an info session for them to come out and ask questions. So we're very engaging in that sense. And I think that helped drive us towards our equity investment round, which is when we worked with external investors, and helped prepared us for that. So when it came to getting people like venture capitalist firms to invest in us, it was a lot of reaching out to our existing incubator networks. So our company's been a part of and is a part of a lot of incubators like SFU Venture Connection. There is the Next 36 program. So a lot of different ones. Even today, like I think I could name maybe 10 more that we've been a part of at some point. And they have a pretty big network of people or investors in the space that we're working with, or that any other companies working in, that they can connect you to. So like warm introductions have gone a very long ways. But there's also like if you reach out to other startups that you've maybe like through the incubator you've worked with or just heard about, sometimes they'll be kind enough to share like an email list or maybe even another introduction to an investor they've talked to. So that's kind of been our approach.
Can you tell me what are venture investors and what are incubators?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I know. Incubators, accelerators are so many terms here. So I'll start with what is a venture capital firm or VC. So this is basically it's a firm that invests money in startups with the goal of getting a return in an X number of years. And then to talk about incubators or accelerators, essentially they're programs that you can join that give support to help accelerate the growth of your startup. Some will provide direct mentorship. They'll pair you up with, like, let's say a hardware mentor that you meet with every week, or like someone who's helping with financing. Like you were asking about how do you go about a VC raise? They'll connect you with somebody who specializes in that. I would encourage anyone who is thinking about or has a startup to look into these programs.
As you reflect on your own experience creating Moment Energy, in what areas do you think there are new opportunities for other solutions or new startups, other areas that are out there?
So within my field, there are already startups doing what I'm thinking of, which is another thing. Sometimes people say, like, if you've thought of the idea, there's a chance somebody's working on it. So some of that would be like very specific. It would be creating an energy management system, which means like, so imagine that you have a site that has solar power, wind, energy storage, diesel generators, like a variety of different energy sources. You have to have a way to figure out when to use which source. So that's where the energy management system or the brain of the system comes in. And there's companies that have been focused on that. Another one is like developing an inverter that is compatible with different energy storage systems. So what an inverter is it's basically something that converts power sources. So batteries operate on what we call DC power. In our homes, like when you plug something into the outlet, it's AC power. So an inverter will be responsible for that conversion, and usually inverters that are out there are bidirectional. So that was another space that we thought of at some point to like, hey, this would be a startup that on its own if we developed our own inverter that is like specialized for repurposed batteries. Yeah, so a lot of different things within our field that I could talk about. So yeah, a lot of ideas come up just by listening to people talk.
That's really interesting. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunities and potential for more startups out there for individuals who are listening to this as well.
Yeah.
And where do you see Moment Energy going in the future and it taking you in your career?
What we see as a vision is having a Moment Energy in every country, where we have batteries retiring from electric vehicle batteries retiring from the road, needing a place to go to be repurposed, and then we provide that facility that repurposes the batteries and then deploys energy storage systems in the same region.
Yeah, and that way you can also kind of reduce the transportation emissions, also, right?
Yes, exactly.
What countries do you think are next for setting up in? I know you mentioned the States, but besides the United States, where else?
India comes to mind. There's some other countries in Southeast Asia that are also like their problem's actually a little bit different. It's more so that the grid is not 100% reliable. So there's lots of power outages, both at the and people's homes, but also in factories and businesses, which makes them dependent on diesel generators. But some of them also don't even have that backup power. So that's another few countries that I can think of. Um, I think in general, there's third world countries as well, and in different areas that have the same problem that I was just talking about, just unreliable electricity that we want to help with.
What other advice do you have for students or individuals who are interested in going about creating a startup related
Uh,
to clean tech?
Going into a startup or starting a company, I think like the first piece of advice is like search for those incubators and accelerators I was talking about, because they provide so much support on their own. Um, the other is that if you have identified something that you want to work on, it's really talk to as many people as you can who might have that problem and collect data, get feedback, see if it's something that only maybe like whether like see how many people actually respond to that problem and if it's something that's worth developing a solution for. And that's something that you'll learn through entrepreneurship classes, through these programs that I was talking about. And then I guess the other piece is like finding people to work with is probably the hardest part. So that's something that again, like I think going out to these to startup events is really a really good idea. I've been to some events. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to an event where people were talking about their biggest failures as a startup. There's always the ability to grow and learn. So even if you're not at that place that you want to be today, like you can keep on driving towards that goal. And then I think it's always important to stop as you're on that journey and like look back and see like where you came from and how much you've accomplished since then. Because I think a lot of people don't realize that when you do reflect on the time that you've spent towards whatever it is, you've actually grown a lot in that process too.
Is there anything else that you would like to leave our listeners with?
My biggest advice is to get work experience. So go on co-op terms. And I can't enforce this or reinforce this enough, but it's so important to get experience outside of the classroom. And it really gives you an edge when you get to the point of graduation. So whether it's going into the entrepreneurship world like I did or applying to work at other companies, it helps you both from a resume perspective, but also from just being more confident and having experience under your belt and more so even figuring out what you like and don't like. Those are all things that I've benefited from doing co-ops. And then the other thing I would want to leave is that joining university clubs or design teams is also really beneficial and a great way to meet new people and also build your skills and networking skills. So that's something that I highly recommend if you're not able to do that work experience, or in addition to the work experience would be even better.
That's so true. Yeah, work experiences, extracurriculars, they all are key in building up your resume and just your skill set in general. So, yeah, great advice. How can people connect with you and find out more about the work that you do?
Yeah, so my you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So that's Sumreen Rattan or Rattan, if for easier spelling. That's or you can even send me an email, sumreen@momentenergy.ca, and check out our website, www.momentenergy.ca, if you just want to learn more about Moment Energy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sumreen. I am so I'm so glad that we had this conversation. It was great hearing about moment energy, and I can't wait to see where it continues to grow.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun talking, and yeah, thanks, Anna.
Of course. Thanks for sitting down with us in the green chair today. Once again, I'm your host, Anna Garza, and stay tuned for our next episode to learn more about the different paths people take to working in the green economy.